So without any further ado, please give a warm welcome to Gerry McGovern.
Thank you. So, if we look at the organizations that are succeeding today, what are their characteristics? What makes them different from the organizations that are failing or that are falling behind? When we look at, the Slacks or the Amazons or the others, what makes them different? Well, one of the things that makes them different is not even centricity, it's an obsession. I mean, what Jeff Bezos talks about is constant fear, is Amazon losing the edge. And the edge is not in technology. The edge is in obsession with the customer, an absolute focus, a relentless focus on the customer. And a lot of these organizations really have it in their DNA and their culture. It's not some PR or some cheap marketing that they promote. Google, focus on the user and all else will follow. These are principles. They're not things that they roll out on the website or once a year. It's the way they think and the way they organize. And Apple truly understand customer needs. That was, people say, oh, but Steve Jobs, he was a genius. They were a genius of understanding customers. That's what they were a genius about. Maybe they'll lose their way today. Who knows how these organizations change? But there are these characteristics. Facebook, most empathetic company in the world. Zappos provide best customer service possible. I remember Zappos used to say, we are a customer service company that happens to sell shoes. Right? The culture and that sort of thinking. And Slack, make work simpler, more pleasant, more productive. Slack did something really interesting. It made a tool for workers that wasn't cruel and excruciating. It made an internal tool that was actually easy. It was so revolutionary. It was actually easy and simple, rather than being one of those monstrosities that most employees have to face in their internal workplace. How radical is that? Something that people can actually use internally. And that created a revolution. And of course, Slack did not grow because of IT managers buying it. They were the last people on earth that wanted anything to do with Slack. It was by employees within the companies beginning to use it and then coming to the IT managers and saying, we got to get a license for this. And this is another drive in these worlds, is that it is the current customer who is driving growth of the modern organizations, whereas most traditional organizations are obsessed with the potential customer, but the new organizations are much more interested in nurturing the experience of the current customer. And this is a key change. Traditional organizations, challenges are the way they operated, and it all worked, before digital. They had lots of things that they did, and they measured those things. They told people stuff and through marketing, and the objective was that people would listen. The marketers went out on campaigns, military analogies, because that's the way they thought about customers, to capture market share. And then when they captured these customers, they exploited them because they had won them in this war that they had actually created. One of the worst things to be in most organizations is a current customer. The longer you stay with the organization, the more they charge you and exploit you. There are business models around exploiting the current customer in order to pay for the bonuses of senior managers and also to pay for the freebies of the potential customers to lure them in to become current customers who will then get exploited to create more freebies for more potential customers. That's basically the business model of a lot of organizations. It's not working as well today because the current customer has a kind of woken up to the fact that they're being exploited. So here we got tell, and then over here the customer's supposed to listen, they do a bit of research, they use, and they might talk to support, but very separated functions. Whereas In the digital realm, in the new realm, it's very interactive, interconnected. You know, where use and buying, it is often, as I said, the current customer who is driving the buying process. Slack had hardly any salespeople. I think they hired their first salesperson about 6 or 12 months ago. The vast majority of their growth was driven through use and through their own customers. So this idea that we do stuff as an organization, we create some marketing and it goes out and it communicates a message and people go, oh, amazing, and then they go and want to buy your product, that doesn't really work as well anymore. And the power was very much towards the organization in historical models. They controlled the message. They had the tools of communication. All the cool tools were on the side of the organization 20 years ago. You met somebody from IBM or whatever, and they had amazing phones or internal systems. They could do meetings, etc. All sorts of video conference. All this what seemed like sci-fi stuff when somebody from IBM would be talking to a friend at a Sunday dinner or whatever. They say, oh, it's amazing. Now you meet people from those organizations and you sympathize with them because they've got crap tools and you've got much better ones. Right? The consumer has much better tools often than the actual people within the organizations today. I talked a couple of months ago to a senior consultant in one of the top consultancies in the world, and he said for the first time in 10 years, he had got a laptop which was more powerful than his home computer. You know, he got a business laptop for the first time that was more powerful than his home computer. Organizations have fallen behind seriously in their ability and their tools, whereas the consumer has raced ahead in the power and their ability to organize and speak to other people and get stuff done. So in the new world, it's not as if the customer is absolutely dominant, but they're much more dominant than they were in historical models. Of course, traditional organizations are obsessed with potential customers. Everything, marketing is all about potential customers. I've never met marketing people who said who didn't say that, oh, they cared about current customers, but I've never met marketers who actually did care. Marketing's job is to get potential customers, then give them over and then get more and more potential. Nobody cares about the current customer. We do support, but we outsource that. You know, we try and do it as cheap as possible because they're the current customers. We need to minimize costs of interactions with these people because what the hell good are they? They've already bought our product. We've got the money out of them. Sure, why would we give a shit about them? You know, that's the thought process, because these are the people who will tell the other people how they're getting on. You know, social media is not a conversation between customers and organizations. It's a conversation between customers and customers. It's peer-to-peer. It's not peer-to-expert. You know, if you're thinking of going to Dublin and you have two friends, and John has been to Dublin and Mary hasn't, who are you going to talk to? You know, you're not going to say, oh, Mary, you've read the marketing, I'll talk to you. You're going to talk to the person who's been there. We're moving away from reading about and getting directed by. Now we want to know, what's it like to use? We want to talk to people who have used, because we don't believe the communication anymore that comes out of organizations or comes out of politicians. We test through use. What's it like to use? And if we haven't used it, we want to find somebody else who has used it, whether it's Dublin or a piece of software or whatever in the environment. And this obsession with the potential customer often kills the experience of the current customer on most websites. So the current customers is the future focus of where revenue and value will be driven in modern organizations. So it is not a customer obsession, but a current customer obsession that is required by the organizations that will truly succeed in this modern world. And it's backed up by evidence in value and financials. shift in value, in organizational value over the last 40 years has been away from physical assets towards digital or intangible type of assets. So in 1975, your factories and your buildings and your car fleet and all those physical stuff made up most of your stock market value. But that has flipped towards intangible assets. Apple's value or Google's value, their buildings are just a tiny fraction of that value. The overall value is in other things, so-called the brand or etc. or their intellectual capital. But most people thought that, therefore, the intangible assets are dominated by the brand, by the actual brand value. But brand value is in decline, according to Harvard Business Review and this amorphous, because brand value is basically people believing in God. And we don't believe in God anymore. We don't believe in Apple. We don't believe in Uber. We don't believe in Google. We use Google. If we're not getting good search results, we go somewhere else. As soon as it stops working, we're off there. We're not saying, I always use Google because my grandparents used Google and before, and we've never used anything else. How could we use anything else? Because we believe in Google. You don't believe anymore. That's what branding is. You got to believe in some amazingly indefinable thing. We don't do that anymore. Where is value going? It's going to the customer. Your customer base is your value. Your current customer base is increasingly where most of your value will be in the future, right? And here, the trust shift, as I said, back around 2000, we did believe in experts. We did believe in doctors much more and in politicians, etc. But there's been a big shift away from me and my brands to me and my friends. Me and my experts to me and my friends. Now we're looking to our peers, me and my peers. What do you think? Have you used etc. This is where trust has shifted in the last 20 years as well. So a lot of things happening in this world, but it's moving away from belief in the system to belief in ourselves and belief in people like us. These are the core shifts that are occurring. And the organizations that understand that it is not the organization that is important, but rather the customer base that the organization has that is important and where the value will actually lie. And everybody knows that it's easier, you know, if you look after your current customers, it's much better. It's much better. But we all know that we shouldn't litter as well, but we still litter. You know, we know these things. People tell us these things and then we totally ignore them because it's always much more exciting to go out there on that campaign and grab some new customers than actually deal with the boring stuff of managing the current customer experience. 10% increase in customer retention yields a 30% rise in the value of the company. The current customer is where the value of these organizations that are succeeding today lies, and they're working. Of course, another thing, current customers are totally pissed off as well. Switching has never been as big. In the US alone, Accenture estimates last year $1.6 trillion of switching due to poor customer service. Just due to poor customer service. $1.6 trillion. That's a lot of money. People, and of course the web allows, digital loosens things up. Digital is not physical. Physical is much more rigid in every sense of the word. People are stuck with their banks in their local towns, etc. Now we can bank with people thousands of miles away, or just do a mortgage here, etc., etc. There's much more fluidity in a physical in a digital environment, and we go on the web to compare and to chat and to change and review, etc. So digital is creating this much greater fluidity within the environments, making it much easier for people to shift if they're not happy, to move between companies. And what's happening, they're moving a hell of a lot more than they did historically. So in the current customer obsession, I've been looking at what are the characteristics of these that really drive this obsessive type of culture that focuses. There's empathy. These organizations are much more empathetic, which doesn't necessarily mean that they even like their customers, but that they really try and understand their customers. They really try and think like their customers. It doesn't mean you have to be best friends with your customers, but that you're actually constantly thinking about them and what are the problems they're trying to solve. Flexibility, simplicity, and trust. So let's look at some of these. Empathy, really thinking from the point of view of your current customer. This is how most organization websites are designed. Right? What org wants a customer to do? What org wants customer to do? What org wants customer to do? What org wants customer to do? Right, that's how most websites are designed. And up here is what the customer wants to do. If they're lucky, a little sliver of navigation running across the top of the page that says, oh, you want to buy a product, you want to get support, here's the things you want to do, but here's all the things we want you to do in the process. That's the classic organization in love with itself type of model. Or else it might look like this. Offers for new customers, offers for new customers, offers for new customers. You know, that model as well, or what the current customer wants to do. I've been looking at these sites over 20 years. They don't change either, you know, in the process. And this is, when you look at a mature website, here's what happens. That gets about 5% of clicks, and that gets about 95% of clicks. And I showed that to a company recently. And you know what they decided to do? They decided to get rid of the top navigation. This is how do we improve the click rate here? We won't get. We'll put it in a burger menu. Burger menu. What a ridiculous navigational concept. Right? I hope you don't use it too much. Right? All the evidence shows it's horrible. Customers hate it. Right? But why do organizations do it? Because we think we can control your journey. If we hide the navigation, I know companies that are hiding search as well. We don't want you to search. We just want you to listen. Shut up and buy our products, particularly these latest ones, which my quarterly bonus is dependent on. Right? That's the way organizations think. And then they wonder, why is there so much switching going on? Why are our current customers pissed off at us? Why don't they love us? You know, we say in our marketing that we love them. Don't they believe us? You know. And then we look at Slack. Every new employee does at least 2 full days working on the support queue. Designers and engineers do 1 hour a week on support forever. Maybe they've changed that recently, I don't know. But I've been talking to a number of people in Slack over the last 6 or 12 months. Slack really takes support seriously. Customer service is their second biggest section next to their developers in their company. And they are obsessed with testing and monitoring and observation of their actual customers. This is how you build empathy. You need specific strategies that allow your organization to interact and see the world from the customer's point of view. So flexibility. And a core of flexibility is the ability to deal with feedback, to encourage feedback from the people who use the environment and to actually react to and manage it and do something with that feedback and become productive. The most flexible organizations are those that can take the feedback and through the fastest possible process deal with that feedback and make changes within their environments based on that feedback. If you look at the history of print and the history of mapping, and you go back, historically, before print came along, maps had to be drawn out by hand, and it was very difficult, very slow, very prone to error, etc., because it was very difficult to keep the same copies. On average, it took a week of work to produce a book of 250 pages, one copy. You know, it took one person 1 week to write out about a 200-page book. So the economies of scale, the costs, etc., before print came along were very prohibitive. But also, it was very difficult when it came to mapping, because it's very difficult to get 200 exact copies if you had to draw them out actually by hand. Then we get the printing press, and the first maps was printed in Holland in 1570. And within 28 years, it had 28 editions. It had more editions of maps than in the previous 500 years, because now there was a technology which allowed to create a copy and to get those copies distributed. But that was just one, very positive thing. The core side effect was they got feedback saying things like, Ireland should be bigger on the map. Ireland is too small. Make Ireland bigger. That wasn't good feedback. But they didn't listen to that. But they got lots of other feedback, which says, here's a problem, here's an issue. And within 28 years, they had 28 editions, and mapping progressed more in those 28 years than in the previous 500 years. Now you come to Google, and they change 28 times a day. Google Maps is constantly evolving. If you're driving, you give feedback and you say there's a roundabout missing here, they'll triangulate that feedback, and that roundabout will be drawn in, if it's correct, within 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. That's the way they think, that's the way they process. You look here in... So anyway, it's going to show you where it maps it over a 12-month period and just shows how they're constantly changing, modifying, evolving, moving forward in their process. So simplicity, driving down, really focused on making things easier. The human brain recognizes delays of greater than 100 milliseconds. So if there's a response in a system greater than 100 milliseconds, the brain you won't be consciously aware, but subconsciously you'll be aware that there's a delay there. Certainly at a second, you definitely notice. At 3 seconds, you're really annoyed. 10 seconds, you're pulling your hair out and you'll leave. So time is a core driver of, don't waste my time. The organization, what Uber attacks or whatever is, that time when you're getting out of the taxi. Those 10 or 15 seconds. Because actually, when you're sitting in that taxi late at night and you're waiting for that credit card to go and the paper to come out, that's annoying. And if you can attack, wherever you're attacking that, it's either cost or time, right? And the best organizations are relentless at saving you time. Amazon now can deliver in certain US cities within an hour. Within an hour. 10 or 15 years, and of course time is relative. 10 or 15 years ago, a week was great. Then it was 2 days. Now it's an hour. In the process. They're absolutely focused on making it easier for you, the current customer, to do things. Whereas most traditional organizations are focused on making it easier for themselves to do things, which often makes it more difficult for the current customer to actually do things in the process. But time is crucial. And simplicity and making things easier. We do a lot of work with Cisco observing customers, and this was a horrendous form. They had to sign up for a guest account. And look at this here. Oh, well, we see it over here. It got a little less horrendous here. This CAPTCHA. Think of that. Think of that. The logic of that. Think of the whole logic of that. What's that thing? What's that organization saying? We couldn't be arsed fixing this problem, so you jump through some hoops for us. You go into a shop and somebody stops you and says, prove you're a human. You're not allowed into the shop unless you prove you're a human. I want to buy I want to do stuff I want to set up a guest account, and I have to prove to you stuff because your programmers are too lazy to get rid of the spam. You're saying to me, prove I'm not a spammer. It's so crazy. It's so crazy thinking. But it's classical old, because we used to be able to get away with this. We used to be able to say, shut up and buy. That was the logic of organizations historically. So when we simplified it a bit, and you never get it you can't get rid of this initially, but 11 Unnecessary questions were taken out of this. Still is a lot of work. What's one of the reactions? Well, they go from 1,500 support requests a quarter connected with this form to 679. It's still way too many. But simplicity, if you simplify, there are direct benefits that can be measured, direct behavior changes. People buy more, they stay longer. You make it easier to do things with you, they do more things. Right? You make it harder for people to do things, they do less things. It doesn't seem like rocket science. Most organizations don't get this. They don't measure simplicity. They only see the costs involved in simplifying the form. No, it's been like that for the last 10 years. Yeah, well, you've been getting 1,500 support requests for the last 10 years as well. That inertia or the lack of desire. And trust. Right. 2017, Edelman do a trust barometer for the last 20 years or so. 2017 was their biggest decline ever. Trust is falling off a cliff. We don't trust anything, particularly experts or politicians or whatever. There's been a huge institutional decline in trust, and it's everywhere. It's in South Korea, it's in Ireland, it's in the US. Maybe it hasn't touched Scandinavia quite as much, but it's touching. It's like a tsunami running across the rest of the world. And yet, why do we trust strangers? Look at the business models at Uber and Airbnb, which depend on trust. You're getting into a car, that is an unmarked car. Why would you do that? Because the Uber CEO says it's okay? I mean, you wouldn't trust, if he was in the car, you certainly wouldn't get in it. Would you get in a car with Uber management? No, So it's definitely not because of Uber management that you're trusting, right? An Airbnb, you let strangers into your home. Why would you do that? Because other people like us have said it's okay, right? It's not that we trust the organizations, it's we trust other people who are using the environment who say it's okay because it's moderate, this person is rated, they've been approved by our peers, by people like us. So how do we build these models that allow for the current customer ecosystem to thrive within the organizational setup? So trust is use. We don't trust. We're not going to trust. We use. We verify. Based on how it's being used and who is using it and how are they satisfied with how it's being used. But the sense of traditional trust is gone and it's not coming back in the vast majority of organizations. So here, a customer obsession, what can tie all these things together? I think one of the models that I've been working on over the years is you really define the customer by understanding what it is they want to do. Right? What matters most to the customer? So the journey to customer obsession is an obsession with what I call their top tasks. The most important things they need to do within a specific environment, whether it's for their health, whether it's buying a car, or whatever it's actually they're doing. What wraps all these things together is being empathetic, understanding the task, flexible and simple, making those tasks more trustworthy. It's really figuring out what they want to do most rather than what we want to do most or what we want them to do most. Because there's often not a very strong connection between what the organization really wants the customer to do and what the customer wants to do. But if you look after the current customer, they will look after you. In this day and age, they will stay with you. They will tell other people, hey, this is a good thing. This is an easy thing within the environment. So around these current customers' top tasks, we must measure. So we must shift our metrics away from measuring what we do as organizations to measuring what our customers are doing. So we understand what's crucial to them. And we ask these questions, are they successful? Can they do these things? And of course, the ultimate winner is how long is it taking them? Okay, they can do these things. They can configure it. They can troubleshoot it. They can do the essential things that they need to do. They can check symptoms. They can get a price. They can do whatever it is that is crucial. Then we relentlessly focus on how quickly, how fast. It used to take 40 seconds. How do we bring it down to 30 seconds? How do we bring it down to 20 seconds? The shifts in the model, if the current customer is now dominant, we must live in the world of the current customer. And to do that, we must understand them. To understand them, we must understand what they want to do. And to manage that environment, we must measure what they are doing. And then improve based on, make changes based on helping them do more of what they want to do it faster, and do it easier. Thank you.
Well, I think that was absolutely inspirational and just great storytelling. And I don't know, it just for me, it just shone a lens into the world. Like that capture example, you say it, we're all laughing. We get that. And some of these examples, the Uber example, for me, what Uber has done is it's made us all have that moment of coolness. You know, I time it now the perfect. I want to step out of the door onto the pavement and into the car because that makes me feel great, right? And that's what Uber has allowed us to do. So I think, look, it'd be great. I think we absolutely should try and get some questions for Gerry. If maybe I'll walk around to use this. So yeah, let me bring over the microphone. I'll run around as we're doing it.
Thanks, great speech. Is there any specifics in the B2B world?
I would say about 60 or 70% of the stuff I do is in the B2B world. It's often B2B are more immature. Their marketing is more propagandist. You know, bigger images, useless content, etc. You know, there's an immaturity often in B2B, but it is no different psychologically than B2C. You know, people want the same. Just because, you know, I'm buying, you know, factory widgets does not mean I enjoy spending 20 minutes making the order when I only have to spend 3 minutes booking a similar quantity of stuff on Amazon. We do not become different human beings when we're booking something or searching or comparing prices. So it's just that B2B is much more immature. It's not that it's a special case, you know, and that customers are just slower. B2B customers are slow-minded and they don't mind waiting, you know, etc. No, they're just as impatient. In the process. But B2B companies tend to be significantly behind the curve in my experience, in their understanding and desire to truly create a great customer experience. And maybe we can change that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think companies are panicking yet about this? Are they waking up to the realization that their brand values are no longer what they once were, which is what they've traded on?
Some of them are, and some of them are waking up and doing even more of what got them into trouble in the first place. You know, because you kind of do what you've been trained to do, and if it's not working, often you do more of it. You know, at greater frenetic speeds. You know, so there's all sorts of environments I'm coming across, but often is a kind of almost totally trying to ignore it's happening as well in the process. So there's all sorts of ways organizations are responding. But, you know, for sure, some are genuinely waking up and say, how can we really change? I mean, when you look at United and you know, that sometimes you need that real crisis moment. And the next day the CEO says, okay, No more bonuses based on internal metrics. All bonuses now are based on external metrics of the customer experience. It's not enough, but it's a change. He gets it that we got to measure the outcomes. We got to measure within the world of the person who is consuming the thing, rather than the world of us producing the thing. So all sorts of reactions, but I think a lot of I don't yet get the wholesale panic sense of really needing to change. Maybe it's another couple of years. I don't know what's your experience.
I mean, yeah, no, you're right. I think people are waking up, but not knowing what to do with it, and that's why I love that. And it's. You read things like Black Swan, and I think that's what's going on. Sort of the first event, everyone's familiar with this book, when black swans were first discovered around the world, and people coming back to whichever country, coming back to the Western world saying, hey, there's these things, they're black swans. And the first thing people did was, well, it can't be. We're preconditioned to know that all swans are white. Yeah. And then something happens, and then post-rationalization is the next thing that happens. But listen, when you're advising companies, working with brands, where even on the four things around the trust, the simplicity, if you're trying to help a company take that first baby step, out of interest, where do you often start?
Well, often, and obviously I'd start from, we all have our own perspectives, and for me, it's go out and figure out what it is your customers want to do. So right now we're doing a big project with Toyota. How do people buy cars? So find out, what's the most important specifications to them? What's the most important, and is it affordability, or is it, at a generalized level? So then, while we're doing that, we have to build all the list of potential specifications and stuff you want to do. You need to define the task ecosystem. But while we're doing that, we get the organization to vote. And we ask, what do you think the customer wants to do? So before the data comes in. And often that can be an eye-opening moment when you compare, well, here's what the customer actually is really important to them. And here's what you think is really important to them. Because there's often a serious disconnect. So the first step is often recognizing that you actually don't understand your customers. Or confirming that you do know that they want price, you're just not giving it to them. Sometimes people know, but they won't give it. You're just not focusing on attention. So really understanding what is the world of your customers? What do they really want to do? What do and that can be a first step, and saying, are you focusing on those things? Because often when we do these analysis, there's an inverse relationship. The more important it is to the customer, the less the organization is doing on it. The less important it is to the customer, the more the organization is doing this. I'm not kidding you. An inverse relationship we often discover, and that can be a wake-up call.
I think it's fascinating. In fact, isn't one of the big things with cars, particularly just on that topic, maybe that actually, especially women and millennials, don't want to go near a showroom?
Well, there is. I mean, you trust, car salespeople just a little bit more than politicians. So. It's notorious. They don't try because you feel like you're going to have a terrible experience. So there is the desire to avoid that. So those are people. There's now websites out there that'll get you the lowest price in your local. That'll map around and say, well, here's the dealer offering the lowest price for this specific model. Of course, the car companies don't like that. The dealers hate that, etc. But these are the new disruptive models because that's what people want. Or no, it's not the only thing that they want. But new organizations are finding a way. Your complexity is your competitor's opportunity. Wow. That's in the digital realm.
I think that's a great one. And we have one from Roland. Yes, of course.
So you speak mostly about client-vendor relationship. How does this translate inside the organization in an employee-employer relationship?
The same basic principle. Most management, in my experience doing this, don't respect their employees. right? And they certainly don't respect their employee time. Traditional management in the last 30 or 40 years has essentially been trained to get rid of people through technology. And they get their bonuses based on either installing technologies and reducing HR people or whatever. So the idea in traditional organizations is actually the employee is a cost, either to be outsourced or to manage down. And if you look at the way the systems are bought within most organizations, the customer is the IT manager. It is never the sales rep. It is never the secretary. The customer of these internal systems are so excruciatingly bad in most organizations, the SAPs or the Oracles, because nobody gives a shit about you booking a room or checking up your pay detail. Nobody cares about that it takes you 10 minutes or 5 minutes. That's beginning. The Slacks and the Facebooks coming in are beginning to really chat. And of course, there's huge disloyalty in organizations, huge disengagement. Only 30% of employees globally are engaged with their jobs. Only 30% of employees on a global basis are engaged with because they're not respected by their management structures. I think that's beginning to change as well, but it's been a long struggle because managers don't care about employees and their time, making it easy for an employee. Why? As a manager, why would I bother? I've been told that 50, 60 times over. Why don't you make it easy? Let's make this book a meeting room easier. Why would I bother? What's in it for me as a manager? Nothing. We've got to change that culture.
Well, is there any final questions for Gerry? Otherwise, we have an hour break now with some lunch, and then we're going back to the 2 tracks. But I want to say it again, and I think a huge round of applause for our keynote speaker, Gerry McGovern.